Can't decide and torn between a romantic, comedy, action, or an indie film to watch for the weekend? Well. Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast is your ultimate guide to the latest movies. Join us as we dissect the latest on the blockbusters. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast.
Welcome to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Arianne, and I am joined here with the wonderful Heidi.
Hello.
Today, the first movie we're going to talk about today is The Nutcracker and the Four Realms. It's actually in theaters. It just came out November 2nd, this year, 2018. The director is, or was, is it Lacey? Lass Hallstrom.
Lasse.
Yeah. I want to say Lass.
Sure. I think
anyway,
that's probably
and
that.
Joe Johnson.
I also feel like all of our podcasts are like, and be careful. And then they're always like, I think that's how I say that guy's name.
Something wrong with us, bro. No, it's okay. It's okay. So if you don't know what the Nutcracker is about, first of all, the Nutcracker is a ballet about a lady who has a dream. And in this dream, she's like fighting off a mouse king, and she kind of, there's like four kind of things that this woman who's dreaming, realms. There's four realms. There's a realm of land of snowflakes, land of flowers, land of sweets, and land of amusement. And it kind of, that's just what the Nutcracker, the ballet and all that is about, is this dream. But in this film, a girl named Clara, who's played by Mackenzie Foy, has some help by her. She calls him Godfather, but I feel like all of them call him Godfather. Like, that's kind of how I took it, because it was just like, oh, that's his name, everybody calls him Godfather kind of thing. He goes
by. He's a fatherly figure.
Yeah. Who's played by Morgan Freeman, Mr. Drosselmeyer. She gets help from him, he kind of like guides her into discovering these four realms, to retrieve a key that opens a very special egg that her late mother gives her. She finds out about these realms, and she meets this Captain Philip guy, and who is played by Jaden. I'm gonna butcher this man's name. Jaden Fawara Knight. Okay. Yep. That's what it's supposed to be.
We're gonna go with it.
Yeah. And anyway, with the help of the Captain Philip and in the Four Realms, Clara has to kind of bring back peace and harmony to the Four Realms. That's kind of the idea. The captain, I just want to say who the cast was there. The Sugar Plum Fairy was Keira Knightley. Mother Ginger was Helen Mirren. I only want to say, I'm choosing to only say those two because the other two, like the in the Land of Snowflakes and the Land of Flowers, those guys are pretty cool. I like the Land of Flowers. Like, his whole outfit is super fancy. But they don't really do a whole lot in the film. So that's just why I'm just like, I don't really feel like I need to mention them, even though they were there. But I really feel like if you know the original story of the Nutcracker, they kind of twisted this in a way. I wasn't really impressed in the way they twisted it. So, I mean, if you like the movie and you're all about ballets, don't go into this movie thinking this is just going to be amazing. I personally was not impressed. To be honest, I did not like this movie.
I would say if you think that you're going in to watch The Nutcracker as a ballet, that's not what this is. No. So there's like the ballet that you can go see of the classic Nutcracker story, right? With a Nutcracker that she like has, and that's her toy and everything. Yeah. This is really not that. This also has a heroine, and she goes on a journey, and
Yeah,
just heroine. Anyway, and she goes on a journey, and like it's just not. There's not a lot of ballet. There's like one scene of ballet.
Yeah,
and it's not about that. It's a different type of story. It kind of takes like the land of like the dreamland of the Nutcracker and some of the story elements, but it changes it.
Yeah, it has that fantasy of conquering good over evil.
Yes.
Aspect. So be aware of that. I am going to say that Keira Knightley's character, she plays the
Sugar Plum Fairy?
Yeah, the Sugar Plum Fairy. She was so annoying. It was her voice. It sounded like she was sucking helium the whole movie. Like it was just super high pitched, annoying. Just stop talking.
That was very surprising. Her voice, I did not expect that, and then she kept it up the whole film.
The whole film. And if you know Keira Knightley, like I know her from the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, she just does such an amazing job, and her normal voice and everything like that. But then hearing her, I'm just like, oh, really? I can't listen.
And then you have the rest of the movie to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very like fantastical film.
It really
like
was.
Where I would say the Nutcracker is a ballet, I would say this is a fantasy movie
for sure.
Yeah, and it's definitely a children's fantasy movie. It's not super long. It's for like kids' attention spans.
Yeah, it's like an hour and a half.
Yeah, and this is Disney, right?
Yeah,
I believe it's Disney, and you can really tell. Like it has the Disney magic.
Oh yeah,
like their CGI is incredible. Their costuming is incredible.
I loved the costuming.
It was so
and
good.
How they did the sets, like
yes.
I'm sure a lot of it was CGI or whatever, but the way they depicted each
realm.
Yeah, it was. I was like, I want to live there. It was awesome.
Right.
It was awesome.
Yeah, and I feel like Arianne, we've talked about this. I wish they had gone into the realms more.
Yeah,
because they were so fantastical.
They
like
were.
the whole like production of them and the concepts of them is beautiful. And, you know, as I said, it's not a super long movie. They don't have time for it, but it looks incredible. Like just the opening scene when they're like, it's like a moving camera shot going through like the old town of London, like in the Nutcracker time, like setting. It reminded me also for this podcast, we've watched You Got Mail.
Yeah.
And I mentioned how the opening scene of that is like going through New York, but the computer animation is so bad. It's just like boxes on a road. This is the complete opposite in ability.
It's like 3D without the 3D glasses.
It's amazing.
Like you can feel it.
It reminded me of the Polar Express kind of. If you've seen the movie Polar Express, it kind of has that type of feel in the beginning. And it is incredible. It's like you're going through the town, you're seeing details of all these characters, and like it's amazing.
Yeah, and with that, with the sets and the cinematography, just the video and the outfits and wardrobe being so good, even if they did make it a little bit of a longer movie just to describe each realm a little bit more, I think that would have even helped out the movie a little bit better. Because they could have done so much with each of them, even
That's
just
true.
like 10 minutes on each of the ones, and it would have been like, okay, yeah, and you see why, or like a backstory, something.
Right. It would have satisfied us more to see more of the realms.
Exactly.
And also, if they don't get nominated for like costuming or something, I'd be very surprised.
Right.
It looks beautiful.
It really does.
I feel like I had to let go of the Nutcracker idea very quickly
in
order to get into the film, because
Exactly.
I didn't dislike it. I liked it. I thought it was good, but it wasn't great either.
Right.
You know, it was definitely a piece of fantasy, and if you don't like fantasy, this is definitely not your film.
Yeah, don't watch it. And that's how I am. I'm not a super huge fantasy person, but I wanted to go in with an open mind, and I'm like, it might be good. It's about the Nutcracker. Don't go in thinking it's all the way about the Nutcracker. You will be disappointed.
It's inspired by the Nutcracker.
Right, exactly. I felt like the dialogue in the movie was super weak.
The dialogue is bad. It is.
Yeah.
That's in my opinion, that's definitely its weakest. Point is just there are some, because like you were saying, like the I don't know if they call him the king, but the man from the flower realm.
Yeah.
The king from the flower realm.
Yeah,
His costuming is great. He looks spectacular. But there are some scenes when he's talking to like the king of like the snow realm or whatever, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like it's very badly written and poorly delivered, and I'm surprised that the director
actors.
like saw that and then was like, okay, next shot.
Right.
You know? Like, and I'm sorry, all of you guys looked great. It's just, it wasn't, it didn't click.
Amazing. Yeah. I even want to say, like, in the fantastical or the fantasy world, when it's good versus evil, and then you have that slight conflict with, like, just two people on the same side, that part with the captain and the mouse, I was like, really? I couldn't even. I had so many questions, and then I was like, "Why was that even there?" Like, that was so lame.
Oh, like when they're like fighting,
quote unquote, fighting the little mouse and the captain, and I was like, "This is dumb. Why would you? Are you serious? This is the conflict?"
Yeah, fantasy's not for you, Arianne.
It's really not. Yeah, the filming. I don't know. The wardrobe and the sets were what put it like that was my favorite part.
I would also say they have Helen Mirren, who is a great actress, and I just feel like she wasn't utilized as much as she could have been.
Right.
She's spectacular, and she looked great, you know, like the costuming.
The makeup was awesome.
The makeup was awesome, and like the concept of her character was very interesting. Mm-hmm. I just feel like they could have given her more to work with, you know, than they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of a Christmassy film, though.
It is.
If you want a Christmas movie.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break and then come back and talk more about the Nutcracker and the Four Realms.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Movie Podcast. We're going to keep talking about the Nutcracker and the Four Realms. Me and Heidi were just talking off air that I was going to mention that this is not a spoiler, because if you know the Nutcracker, it is about a mouse king.
Yes, the way he's like a villain in the film.
Yeah,
the classic Nutcracker.
Exactly. The way they portrayed the mouse king, or mice in general, in this film, like they try to keep it incorporated in that. It was disgusting. It was the worst. I just want to
if you are afraid of mice, this will trigger you, like, because I also don't feel like I'm giving this away because it happens very early on in the film.
Exactly.
So the Mouse King, who is a classic character from the Nutcracker, in this film is a like moving wave of mice.
Yes.
Like if a bunch of mice just like stood on each other's shoulders and like moved.
Yeah.
This would be it. It's like a wave of mice, and it's terrifying. So
it is.
If you don't like mice, that will be the most frightening character that you see.
Yeah, that was me. Because soon as I saw like all these little mice coming together to make this large mouse king person thing, because I don't know if it was like really shaped as a person or if it was shaped as a mouse.
I felt like it was shaped as a mouse.
Yeah, I thought that too.
But it's really like a moving blob, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, but they all moved to work together to be like this one thing. Yeah. And it was so gross to me.
It was definitely a work of CGI that I was impressed by.
Again, with the CGI. And that was the best part of the movie, because there was no talking on that part. Right. But even the noises, I was like, oh, gross, I hate mice.
That was terrifying.
Yeah. I don't know. If you like fantasy movies and you're kind of into, it's more targeted towards children. I will say that
it's a children's film.
Yeah, children's fantasy. It is a good one to bring your kids for like the holidays, like Heidi said, more like Christmassy or something like that. Because they do show like they're getting their presents and stuff like that kind of thing. So, I do like I don't know, I would bring my kids to see it. Maybe my daughter. My son would probably be like, this is whack, Mom, don't ever do that again.
I feel like for kids it's good. It's not super scary.
No, not at all.
Except the mouse thing, you know.
Yeah. My favorite part was, what are those things that like those holiday things where you have like the one little tiny person and then it's inside another.
Oh, like the Russian dolls.
Yeah. Those.
Like the Russian nesting dolls. That's what it is.
Nesting dolls. Those were funny. They were probably also creepy because I kind of felt creepy. Both ways on that. I was like, that's cute. Then I was like, whoa, what?
Yeah. There's, just if you don't like fantasy, let me say it this way. Let me say it in the positive version. If you have a child who likes fantasy and you want to watch something for Christmas, this would definitely be the movie for it.
Yes.
Yeah. If you don't like any of those things, then this is probably not for you.
Right. Or if you just want to see it, don't hold it to a standard where you're like, oh, I love the Nutcracker. This is going to be so amazing. Right. And it's a fantasy movie. Don't go in there with low expectations, I would say, because it was not that great.
Yeah. It looks great. But I mean, my personal favorite scene was when they have ballet. Because I like the ballet. Right. Yeah. So, or if you like children's movies, maybe this will be the thing for you. Yeah. You might, if you're a fan of that, then I would say this is good.
Yeah. But for sure, the costumes are amazing. The makeup is amazing. Good. The sets and even how they make the sets CGI, either way, it was awesome.
It looks so
that
good.
way. So that by itself, I just enjoyed watching. The storyline in general, not so much.
Yeah. Some of the dialogue maybe could have been cleaned up a bit.
Yeah. Or even delivered better. It's like you said, the delivery was horrible.
The delivery was not good.
Yeah. And it wasn't like with the plot, it didn't seem super serious. It's like, oh, we got to do like this and kind of make everything come back to harmony and be nice again. There was no like emphasis on it. It was just like, oh, well, yeah, we got to do it just because we got to do it.
Yeah.
I guess.
It was kind of like a kid's, I don't want to say it's just a kid's movie because there are some kids movies that have really good plots. Yeah. But I would say this is like a kid's movie where a lot of the effort went into the costuming and effects.
Right, exactly.
And maybe a little bit more could have been on some of the writing. Right. Storyline, I would say.
Sure. For the adults anyway, because I'm sure the kids are just looking at that part anyway. Like, oh, look at the pretty dress or whatever,
Yeah, agreed.
But yeah, so that's kind of our review on the Nutcracker and the Four Realms. We're going to move on to the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This was released December 2005. The director was Andrew Adamson. The cast, I'm going to say the cast, which is the four kids, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. Peter was played by William Moseley, Susan Anna Popplewell, Edmund Skander Keynes, and Lucy was played by Georgie Henley. The witch was played by Tilda Swinton, and I love her.
She's so great.
She's super good. This movie, it just kind of shows four kids who, they get sent away because it's around World War II time and they lived in London. They get sent away for safety issues.
To the countryside.
Yeah. And they stay. This was where I was confused about. Heidi, help me out.
Okay.
Who was it? Was it like a distant family member they went to go stay with? Because I was like, who is he to them?
No, I think it was just someone random. Because in the time of World War II, because there were bombs being dropped on London, because there was like a city center, they moved the kids out to the country where they weren't going to be bombed. Mm-hmm. So I feel like people just opened up their houses. Okay. So it doesn't necessarily mean they stayed at a family member's house.
Gotcha.
I feel like he was just a guy.
It's just random.
Who had a house that could store children, basically.
The house was huge.
It was
by the
huge.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like if you haven't seen this, you can go watch it. This movie is definitely for little kids also.
Yeah. And it's based off of the classic C.S. Lewis series, like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Yeah.
Right. But the summary of this is these kids, one of them finds the wardrobe and she just kind of discovers this land, and the other siblings go in there. They kind of stumble onto it looking for her or hiding anyway, and they're supposedly like the kings and queens of this land,
right? Of Narnia.
Of Narnia, who are supposed to bring it all back to be good and free and amazing and harmonious and all those words all over again, because it hasn't been like that for a very long time. They said it's like winter time, and when they're ruling, it's like springtime and summer and just amazing. I did not like this one either.
Yeah, I just feel like fantasy children films are not your thing.
No, they're not.
And that's okay. But yeah, I mean, it's like if you know the books, I feel like Narnia is a pretty well-known story idea, at least especially because like there are other books in the series,
right?
But I feel like the most well-known one is this one, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and like the idea of like children and they're like rulers of this land and they make it good again,
right?
You know, like I feel like that's like if you're a child, like that's really amazing. You're like, oh, I'm a kid,
I can be king,
right? Exactly. It's like an enjoyable children's movie because so I'm young. I saw this film in theaters as a child and I loved it because of that, because I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because I was caught up in the fantasy of it. I loved again, as I said, the idea of like, oh, they're children and they get to rule this wonderful land and make it springtime again and, not eternal winter. And like, I love that idea. So as a kid, I loved it. I actually saw, I think the second one is like, The Lion, the Witch, Wardrobe, and like Prince Caspian. It's Prince Caspian, basically. Okay. And so I saw that as well. It's not as good as this one. And then they even made a third one, like Dawn, something of the Dawn Treader. I'm so sorry, Narnia fans. I apologize. But yeah, and I saw it in theaters. So as a child, I was like, oh, this is great. I love the fantasy. But, as an adult, it doesn't quite hold up. But I'm also not a giant kids movie fan.
True. Me either. That's
so we're just cynics.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. My daughter loves this movie. She's 10 now, and she watched this a year or so ago in class at school.
Oh, that's prime age for this movie.
Yeah, and I love that movie. How come you're watching it without me? I'm like, you can finish watching it. I don't even care. Tell me what happens. That's how I felt, because I was like, I'm not into this. I was telling Heidi, it took me like 7 hours to watch this movie, and it's only like 2 hours. 2 hours and 20 minutes. It took me 7 hours to watch this movie because I just couldn't get into it. I'm so sorry, but I will not be watching the other two. I'm sure they're great for young children. It's a nice, like, if you have kids and you kind of want to just be like, oh, watch this stuff, it's going to be great, they would love it. And it's a series, so it's like Heidi said, they made a part 2 and a part 3. So just to like keep them entertained a little bit, or just
on long car rides.
Something. And then, or just like for a family movie night or something that will engage kids and on their level. This is a good movie for that.
This is, I can really tell this is a kids movie because they have talking animals. So,
but
I liked that as a kid, oh, the beavers are talking. Yeah. That's adorable, and I do still think that's kind of cute.
Yeah.
Sorry, Arianne.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
So I liked that. I feel like you were saying, like it has charm for children. But I do know adults who love this film. I feel like we are not those type of adults.
Right.
But that's okay. But yeah, it's adorable. Also, Tilda Swinton is in it, and if we talked about costuming in the Nutcracker and the Four Realms, her costuming is also great.
Her costume, I want to say that because I loved her costume. Yes. The other wardrobe in the film reminded me of, how extravagant the wardrobe was for Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. Like they made it like you could feel it was just awesome.
The craftsmanship.
Oh, yeah. This was like a kid version of, like, if a mom was going to be like, I'm going to clean the house, clean this, it looks amazing after. If a kid said, oh, I'm going to do something nice and clean the house, and they did that, like, you tried, thanks. That's how I felt about their wardrobe in this movie. Because I'm like, it's a kid's version of Lord of the Rings kind of battle, and just... it's for kids.
Yeah.
So.
It's I mean, I guess it's because the most memorable costuming is Tilda Swinton's character.
Yeah.
So I guess that really does speak to it.
Yeah. Right, exactly. The dialogue again was weak for me too in this one. I was like, it bothered me, and I know that it's the background of the filmmaker or the director is like super. I don't want to say super, but it's a religious kind of backstory. I guess he flipped some of the Bible
C.S. Lewis is a famous Christian author, and so his film is kind of like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is kind of like the Jesus story, but told in a fantasy type realm.
Right.
And then, like, it's kind of like in Lord of the Rings, J.R. Tolkien is also a Christian writer.
Yeah.
And there are elements of that in his story. His is not as straightforward as C.S. Lewis's.
Yeah. And you can see that in this movie.
You can really, totally you can feel it.
Right.
And if you know that as an adult going in, I would say that might take away from some of it if you are not a religious person.
Right. But if you are, it's nice to point out to your kids to be like, oh,
Yes.
it's a good conversation starter for even like a gateway to try and get your kids, if you're religious, to talk to them about things.
Yeah, that's true. I could see this playing in like a youth group class or something.
Exactly.
Like for kids. It's kind of like that. It's like the, I don't know, the less obvious Veggie Tales.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And I know that is a lot of parents do enjoy this movie for that reason.
Right, exactly.
Because they say things like the son of Adam and daughter of Eve. You know, like those things are not hidden in the story.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
So it's pretty obvious. And I also feel like they're older books, like more modern fantasy, like Harry Potter has more modern dialogue.
Exactly.
I feel like this book is an older book, and the dialogue is not as modern as what we're used to.
Right.
You know, I feel like it maybe feels a bit clunky because it's just what we're not used to hearing.
Right, right. We're going to take a quick break and come back and finish talking about the Chronicles of Narnia.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Movie Podcast. We're going to continue talking, or finish talking, I should say, about the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I did want to say that for a kids movie, for a movie that's aimed more for children, I would say children under 10, it is a really decent movie to keep kids entertained.
Right. There's some action, but it's not like super bloody or like super intense action.
Exactly.
But there's enough of like talking animals and fantasy, I feel like, to keep children entertained.
Yeah, where they would like stuff like that. If you're an adult and you don't like stuff like that, or you just have questions like me, I've said this before, I am the person who talks to the TV when I watch movies. It doesn't matter where I'm at. I'll be at home, I'll be at a theater, it doesn't matter. I had so many questions in this movie. So I was just like, why, if the lion can just breathe on the statues and they come back to life or go back normal, hasn't he been doing that the whole time? Like, as they're waiting for these kings and queens to show up.
Yeah.
And then, like, the fighting scenes, I'm like, oh, they just gonna stab him like that. Really? It just happens. So I just have so many questions.
See, that's funny because I like always have made loopholes for myself in order to watch this movie, you know, because you have to like get rid of some reality in order to enjoy it. Because
in
like
any fantasy,
exactly,
I feel like you have to.
In any fantasy, you have to put that aside, you know, to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because like when he like breathes on the statues, I'm like, well, maybe that's because
like give it
he just
reason.
Like that thing that just happened that I feel like is a spoiler that I can't tell you.
Yeah. That
just happened, so maybe that gave him the ability to do it, you know.
Right.
But you have to like go through those hoops sometimes for this film. And also, on a side note, as a child, my favorite character is always Mr. Tumnus, who's like a satyr. I think that's the right word. He has like the goat body. And I always thought that was so cute. And when I watched it with my mom as a child, I thought it was great. I don't really know if my mom liked the film, but the only part that she liked, that she like laughed at, was when he goes inside and she just like laughed at him because he was like a goat. Like she just thought it was ridiculous. And he like comes in and like shakes off the snow off of him, and she just thought it was really cute. And that was like the only part that I heard her enjoy as a kid. So I'm like, it's not really for adults.
Right. The thing about the questions that I have for it as an adult, I like to ask those questions when my kids are around, specifically my daughter, because kids have such a broad imagination.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll like be like, well, why didn't he just do this? Why is it this? And then my daughter will be like, well, because of this and this and this, and just kind of make up something. Like how you would just be like, find some reasoning.
Yeah.
She'll just make up something that makes sense to her, and I'll be like, okay, that's why kids like it, because they can put their own imagination into it. And then like as an adult, I'm like, I guess that makes sense. Still sounds dumb, but I get it.
Right. And I think that is like the beauty of like children in fantasy films, is they get that like that ability to use their imagination. Right. So I feel like that's good, you know, and it's not like crushed by like violence in reality.
Exactly. And the violence in this was like,
it was very minimal.
Yeah. I think she like makes them into stone with like a little stick thing or icicle. I don't know what it was. Like I said, it took me 7 hours to watch. I was like, what is that for? Why? But this movie is cute for kids. If you're an adult and you like fantasy films, don't be super impressed with the wardrobe or the dialogue, but it's kind of cool like to see. I liked the little girls. No, that's not true. I didn't really like her acting. The little girl at first, she kind of bugged me.
Like the little Lucy?
Lucy, yeah. Oh. Yeah. Her facial expressions were cool. When she found the whole Narnia, she like kept backing up in the wardrobe, and then she's like, oh wow, this is so cool. Her facial expression there, but then when they kept trying to get her to cry, like in those sad scenes, I'm like, Kate, stop trying to make her cry, because obviously she can't.
Not believable.
No, not at all. Yeah. And I feel like those actors, if they had a better script, it could have been so much better.
I could see that. Yeah.
So sorry for them on that, but
also, people might just like the books.
Yeah, read the books. Books are always better anyway. Not trying to say don't go watch this movie. I mean, at least you can get a kind of lifelike version of it if you're just reading the books and you want to see something about it. Unless you're like me, because when I read books, it plays out like a movie in my mind.
Oh yeah.
So,
and then you see it in the movie and it ruins it.
Yeah. I hate that. Yeah. I hate that. So, but yeah, this was definitely, I would say, 10 and under. Both of these movies, children's movies for fantasy. And if you want to bring your kids or see it as a family, they're good movies to see as family, especially Nutcracker in the Four Realms, since it's out in theaters. If you guys go out for movies like on the holidays or whatever, it'd be a fun one to go watch.
Also, like Narnia, like a lot takes place in like the snow. Yeah. So that could also maybe kind of Christmassy.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So that is our reviews on those two movies this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and please join us next time for more movie reviews on Movie Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.